G'day everyone, welcome back to Got the 4 Points. Another week of local footy. It's pretty wet and cold this weekend in Melbourne. We hope that your side has got the 4 points despite the wet weather. I did see some very interesting scores through central Victoria on the weekend where there was a lot of rain. You could really track where the heavy rainfall was by where the scores were less than 50 for both sides. Very interesting weekend of footy. We've got some real controversies to talk through this week on Got the 4 Points, as well as some very exciting results. Things are really shaping up for finals. We've got more people getting close to the ton in terms of goal kicking. So much to cover, Pete. How you been?
Yeah, been well, thanks, Rob. I was going to say the exact same thing. I was going to say you could tell where it was rather heavy deluges of rain in the basis of the scoring, and certainly checking out Play HQ for most of yesterday and a little bit of today. You could certainly see where there were maybe some boggy ovals. What was yours, Rob, in your time playing? What was the oval when there was lots of rain? You just knew it was going to be a bit of a nightmare.
Oh, every single one of them. Um, I have a great memory. I have two great memories I'll share with you. One is I played out at Avoca in the under 17s one morning, starting at, I don't know what that would have been, 9:30 in the morning or something. And it was really, really cold, but there had been about 2 inches of rain the night before, and the whole western wing was underwater. And I remember the first minute of the game, the ball got shoveled out of the centre square, and I was playing on the back flank, and my Evoker opponent sprinted out to get the ball. It was overtaken by one of my teammates who got the ball, and I'm like, right, I've got to put the shepherd on here. So I put the shepherd on. Unfortunately, the Evoker bloke was a lot bigger than me, and I went absolutely flying, and I just remember the stream of water from me soaking the people off the edge of the boundary line. I was absolutely saturated in the first minute of the game. It's like I'd been for a swim.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's one memory of Avoca. The other memory I have is playing for Wesley Hill when we went out to Harcourt. And I don't
Mm.
remember anything about the game, but I do remember the guy who wrote the match report for that game said that it was really nice of the Harcourt apple farmers to plough the field prior to planting their orchard on it. Because, of course, Harcourt's a great apple growing area.
It
So
is.
that gives you an idea of the state of the ground out there. But what about you?
For me, that type of weather always brings back under 18s in the Bendigo Footy League, Canterbury Park, Eagle Hawks home ground. We played there one weekend. I was shock horror, coming off the back of having dislocated my shoulder during the week at training. I'd laid a rather significant tackle, which wasn't normally my go. And the reason why it wasn't normally my go is because as I laid that, probably I would credit it as one of the best tackles I ever laid, is the shoulder unfortunately came out. And I was pretty hesitant about playing. I was trying to convince Lenny Watson, the coach, that I didn't think I was right, and he was just telling me, "You'll be fine. You just get it done." Played full back, and there was the end I was at to start the game was flooded. So not just sort of muddy, it was actually under, I would say, an inch of water. And funnily enough, it's the best game I've ever played. Because being someone that came from a soccer background, there was very little clean ball picking it up off the deck. And so being, like I said, soccer background, Italian boy, I just used my soccer skills and basically played soccer for 4 quarters. And we won that game, but I just remember it was pretty awful conditions. So that's where my mind always goes when I think of wet weather footy.
We've actually been pretty lucky. We've had a few wet weather rounds throughout the season, but from what I've seen, just the different grounds that I've seen around Victoria so far, most of them are holding up reasonably well.
Okay.
Even the Uni Main seems to be doing okay, although I haven't seen the state of it after the St Kevin's against Uni Blues game yesterday. So anyway, Pete, we've got a lot to cover. Just a reminder for everyone to check us out on Spotify or YouTube, whatever your medium of choice is. Keep sending us tips and info and interesting stories on Instagram. send us a message there and also to our Gmail, gotthefourpoints@gmail.com. We are especially interested as we head towards finals in what different final structures there are.
Mm,
We've got to start getting our heads around this.
we do.
I was so captivated by all the exciting results this week. I haven't done any finals research, but yep, let us know what goes on in your league and where your team sits. But we're going to get through a reasonable number of things that caught our eye this week, I think, Pete. We haven't got a particular theme here for Footy Fire Starters, but we're going to go through a few of the more interesting stories. Do you want to lead us off?
Yeah, definitely, Rob. I will lead us off, and it's actually one you picked up last week was Div 1 UHSVU and their narrow loss over top of the ladder Ormond in that competition by 1 point. Well, slightly better news for them this week, albeit another nail biter. They've had a 2 point win over Oakley. So
Hmm.
clearly hitting some form. Oakley sitting around third, I think third or fourth on the ladder in Div 1. Um, and so UHSVU, for a team that's sort of been sitting in that lower echelon of the ladder, are really starting to hit their straps. Would have loved to have had that win, of course, over Ormond the week before, but certainly had a really great win on the weekend just gone. Down 20 points at quarter time. And maybe, as we well know, being that we were at Harry Trott Oval against Collegians yesterday, maybe a wind affected game because
Mm.
down 20 points at quarter time, they turned that into a 30-point lead at halftime.
Whoa.
So the little
Wow.
50-point turnaround, the little St Kilda comeback against Melbourne,
Yeah.
which we'll just sneak that in there for any Saints fans or
Or
disappointingly
D's
for any
fans.
D's fans, and we know a few of them.
Mm.
Not only that, Rob, you sort of think, okay, they've had a good win there, 2 points. They're starting to build some momentum. But it was also the manner in which they did it. So Jacob Hunt kicks the game winner just before the siren goes. So sort of kicks it, ball travels in the air, given a goal, siren goes. The 35-minute mark is when
Oof.
Jacob's goal went through. So you can imagine that they were on the precipice of another heartbreaking loss. Um, Not only that, Brandon Jackson bobs up for UHSVU and kicks 6 goals. Not to be outdone, though, Rogan Kitts kicked 6 goals for Oakley. So now we had spoken a little bit about UHSVU both in our VAFA preview of Div 1 that we did in another episode, but also last week when we were talking about their loss to Ormond. And this was a team that was only a few points away from playing in Prem C, just missed out on promotion. Clearly haven't had the season they wanted this year, but maybe they're starting to find a bit of form back into the season. They are 3 games outside of the top four with only 4 games remaining. A small chance, but they'll need absolutely everything to go their way. But if their current results are an indication of sort of where they're at as a team, they've definitely given themselves a chance if they play like that.
Absolutely. And I was very impressed when I saw them play last week. I thought they had some good players through the middle who moved the ball, and obviously someone up front who can kick a bag. Brandon Jackson kicked 6 last week as well, Pete. So
Mm,
he's doubled up. He's doubled up on the 6 goal haul.
he's in
So
form.
that's very impressive. Yeah. Good club, like I mentioned last week.
Yeah.
Excellent banter behind the goals.
Hmm.
Good club. Happy to support the other inner north, or most of the other inner north clubs. And yeah, so very happy to see them doing well and definitely avoiding relegation, maybe even pushing for finals. That would be
Essentially,
quite the turnaround from a few weeks ago.
would be.
Now, Pete, I'm going to take you down to the Mornington Peninsula League. We know we spent a little bit of time looking at that league in the last year, especially related to Division 2 with Coringal. I'm on the board there with Coringal. Well, in Division 1 on the weekend, there was an absolute comedy of errors surrounding the scoreboard situation. Now, Uni Blacks played at Collegians yesterday. We had a great win. We're very happy with that. But we did notice on that day we had two little things that went on with the scoreboard there. One was unfortunately one of our players suffered a serious injury, and we hope that he's doing okay, Sam Bennett. But because the time clock kept running, it reached 40 minutes on the collegiate scoreboard and stopped. So we found the end of the clock on the collegiate scoreboard, which was an extremely trivial aside to a very unfortunate situation. We also saw that the scoreboard, for whatever reason, was very, very slow to update in the last quarter. As the Uni Blacks were piling on goals, it didn't appear that way on the scoreboard. Well, down in the Mornington Peninsula League, things were even more bizarre, Pete. So it was a pretty epic last quarter. Sorrento Sharks were trying to come from behind. They almost managed to steal the game with 3 goals, five in the last quarter. They probably rue some missed chances there. But when the siren sounded, the game scoreboard at the ground, at the Frankston YCW ground, showed that scores were level. So players started shaking hands, probably holding their heads a bit there, like, ah, oh, damn, no result. We know that flat feeling after a
Mm,
draw. Well, the umpires have come together and they've had a little chat. And while they're having that little chat, there's a lot of messages flying around from Sorrento fans who've had a little look on Play HQ and they've seen that on Play HQ, Sorrento have won the game by 1 point. However, by the time that the umpires have conferred, and some of these messages have been flying around, the goal umpires have determined that actually Frankston YCW won the game by a point. Now, it does seem from the media reports as though some of the Frankston players were pretty certain they'd won, but absolute confusion reigning supreme down there. We can confirm that Frankston YCW did win the game by 1 point. Um, the YCW are called the Stone Cats. I think I've mentioned that before. One of the great names and more unusual names in local
definitely.
football. Um, they did win the game eventually. It was decided by 1 point. Really just highlights what pressure these volunteers can be under doing the scoreboard. Goal umpires, I don't know whether they were volunteers or paid, but
Mm,
well done to everyone for keeping a calm head. Sounds like, by all reports, there were some very disappointed Sorrento fans, but also very understanding that these things happen.
yeah.
So lots of volunteers putting in their time here. Clearly, it got very close, and a couple of people have made different mistakes, and it's just been shown up because it was a very, very close margin.
Mm,
Probably a little bit extra disappointing in the end for Sorrento not to get any points out of that game, because Sorrento are in seventh on 6 wins, but because of really good percentage, that win would have actually propelled them to fifth and into a final spot.
right.
Now, of course, the season's not over, so it's plenty
No.
of time for them to do that, but they would have been banking. Those supporters that saw the result online were probably thinking they just jumped up into finals,
Mm.
but they're going to have to wait another week to do that. So, yep, plenty of controversy down there related to the scoreboard.
Yeah, and I suppose it's just a good lesson, isn't it, that the score isn't official into the two goal umpires meet and
Yep,
wave their flags
yep,
to call the game officially. But you do, don't you? You live and die by the scoreboard. Um,
yep,
and you play to the scoreboard as well because
yep.
it's not like the umpires meet at the 20-minute mark and go, hey,
Mm,
the scoreboard's wrong.
yeah.
The scoreboard is the scoreboard until such time that the two goal umpires do confer in the middle and either confirm or change, which is really tough because there's really no way around it other than just hoping that the volunteer has seen it every single score that's occurred, and sometimes you miss it, or
Mm.
sometimes you think you've put it on, but it hasn't gone on. I mean, slightly suspicious. I felt yesterday in the Collegians game that it felt like the Collegian goals didn't take long to go up on the scoreboard, but our goals seemed to take a little bit longer to go up. So I'm not sure whether it was a computer delay or a human desire to not announce where the scores were at. I did think yesterday, Rob, as an aside, um, that we could have had a Fremantle St Kilda debacle with the siren gate because the collegian
Yeah.
siren left a little bit to be desired and was quite difficult to hear. And I was a little bit worried that in the sort of heat of the game, if it was close late, lots of yelling, lots of shouting that the umpires might potentially not hear the siren go. I certainly missed it at one point. Was a little bit confused why players were walking away from a stoppage, only to realise that the siren had gone. So, yeah,
Yeah.
bit unlucky there for Sorrento. Um, Sounds like that would have been a really important win for them to have, but still life in the season yet. I'm going to take us, Rob, from one 2 point win in UHSVU to another 2 point win, this time in the Ballarat Football Netball League with Sebastopol. So, again, we spoke about Sebastopol last week. They knocked off a top team there unexpectedly, which really helped their cause moving into the top six. And we did discuss last week Ballarat is a top six. They've this time had a 2 point win over Redan. So, Redan a little bit lower on the ladder. So a win that they would have been hoping to get and have just snuck home to get. That does now put them in the top six, so level on points with Bacchus Marsh, who are fifth. They have 4 games remaining, and upcoming they have a really, really big test in terms of 4 weeks. If you wanted a 4 week test to understand where Sebastopol are at, this is the 4 weeks. Thunbury, Darley, who are both at the top level of the ladder. North Ballarat, who are one of the teams just below that sixth spot, I think about 2 points behind Sebastopol, pushing for a final spot. And Bacchus Marsh, who are the other team in that fifth spot that are a level on points with Sebastopol. So really tight there. I know we did have a little bit of who's going to make that top six in Ballarat. Well, it's still all to play for, and it sounds like they're going to have some absolute bumper games coming up, where each and every game is going to have a little bit of meaning in it for the teams, which, as we've discussed before, country football leagues don't always have the privilege of having that without a promotion relegation system, um, where sometimes games can just be a little bit, dead in the water. They've got some real live games coming up, so that's really interesting. On top of that, Rob, continuing on with the Redan theme, as that was the team that Sebastopol defeated by 2 points just a few hours ago, and I'm talking just a few hours ago. An article came out in the Courier that Redan have sacked their coach Gary Learmonth. Now that is the coach of Redan, not Learmonth, for those playing at home. So he's been sacked with 4 games remaining in the season. Now they are sitting ninth at the minute, which is second bottom. Um, Gary Learmonth has been there for 3 years. This is his third year as the coach. So in 2023, they finished fifth. In 2024, they finished eighth, which was third bottom. They had 11 teams in the competition that season. And 2025, they currently sit ninth with 10 teams in the competition, so second bottom. Big call. 4 games left in the season as well. Interesting time. Clearly, they feel like they want to get a head start on their decision for 2026. But I don't know. I can't help but feel, a ladder position or finishing fifth in 2023 and then eighth in 2024 and ninth in 2025. Clearly, the results in the last couple of years haven't been where they would like them, but geez, it's a tough game, football, isn't it? Sometimes you don't get the time you would like to be able to prove that you're building something for the future. And you and I actually went to a Redan game last year, and we were
Mm,
actually somewhat impressed by them. So,
yeah.
um, not to be for Gary Learmonth and not to be for Redan this season, but yeah, big call with 4 games left in the year.
Yeah, you'd have to think they've either got somebody else already lined up or there's some kind of personal problem there that needs to be resolved quickly because it's pretty unusual to lose a coach or to sack a coach mid-season in local football. A little less common, I think, than in professional sport. Um, Although, having said that, I did see that Troy Schwartz has been sacked by Bond Beach. You sent me a message earlier in the week about there's an ex-AFL coach in local footy who's been sacked, and at that point we didn't know who it was. I'm pretty sure that's who it was.
It was,
So,
yeah.
um, no, not as common in local footy, perhaps, to
Mm,
have a coach sacking midway through the year. Pretty tough, I would have
mm,
thought.
would have thought
But
so.
hopefully it can be turned around there for Redan, one of the oldest and proudest clubs in Ballarat. But shaping up to be a very impressive finals campaign and run into the finals there in the Ballarat League. It's tightening up nicely,
It
and
is.
Sebastopol are one of the teams that are making it tighten up nicely, coming from a pretty poor start.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, really starting to find their way. Now, Pete, I said that I had two controversies for you this week. So we're going to move from a scoreboard controversy to an umpire controversy. Now, you and I have talked previously on this show about how we need to be respectful of the umpires. We've heard about how there's been efforts by AFL umpires to come back to local footy to sort of provide an advertisement for the game and an impetus for recruiting new umpires. We've heard about some really despicable behaviour where there's been, especially young umpires copping abuse that they just don't need, just don't deserve, shouldn't be on. We know that umpiring this game that's so fast and so contested and has quite a few rules that are open to interpretation is really difficult. And it does bring out the heat in all of us at times. I'm guilty as charged at various moments. Well, something I never thought I would read, Pete, is that tensions have boiled over, causing the abandonment of a game between the umpires, not to the umpires by the players, and not spectators to the umpires, but I'm talking a Barney between the officiating people in the game. Now, that's exactly what's happened in the Southern Footy League thirds match on the weekend between Springvale Districts and Endeavour Hills. Now, my understanding is that one of the umpires was club appointed by the home team, Springvale Districts. The other one was a league appointed umpire. Impressive that they've got league umpires in the thirds there in the Southern Footy League, I
Very
might add.
impressive.
I don't know which one it was that kicked this off. However, the circumstances appear to be a bit of a quarter time brouhaha between the players. Now that's very common. We had a bit of that in the Collegians Blacks game as well. A little bit of feeling in the game. Don't think it escalated particularly far. However, one umpire has accused the other following that melee of losing control of the game. The other umpire hasn't taken too kindly to being told how to control the game. There's been a real flare up. There's been a swearing incident. Somebody swore at somebody, and the other one walked off the field. And the other umpire's like, well, I can't umpire this thing on my own, so I'm going to walk off the field too. And to the absolute astonishment of the sides, of both players and coaching staff and supporters there at Springvale Districts, the umpires have not reappeared and the game has been abandoned at quarter time. Now, Springvale Districts were leading the game by 7 points. I guess because it's the third fixture, maybe they've decided, look, we'll let it go. We won't fight too hard to get this game going again. By all reports, they were actually sharing some food afterwards, the players. They were all having a bit of a laugh about it. So good on them for seeing the light side. Not good that they didn't get three-quarters of a game of footy that they deserved and they should have had, those players. Perhaps good that it didn't happen in a Premier League game or a Div 1 game where there was a bit more at stake. But still, one of the more extraordinary stories I've ever heard in local football, the umpires turning on each other and calling the game off because they couldn't get along. Unbelievable. I've seen it
Yeah,
all.
yeah, I was about to say I don't really have much to add to that, Rob, because I don't know what you do add to something like that. That's just a crazy turn of events. Hopefully, we hear a little bit more of the fallout of that. I'd just be quite keen to understand what really went down. But yeah, you can.
I also wonder, I don't want to prompt anybody to try this, but like, if you're losing a game, Could you just like and could you just like try and provoke something between the umpires to like to get the game called off? I don't know. Is there a precedent here? If the umpires are not getting along, is that it?
Maybe there's a new tactic that's being developed, but I can just imagine at the quarter time huddle, the absolute bemusement of both
Yeah.
playing groups and coaches as they go, hang on, what's going on? Where are the umpires going?
Oh,
Um,
imagine just emerging from your quarter time huddle and you're all in your positions and you're like, where's the umpire? Where, what's going on? I'd love to know how that played out. Did the umpires just disappear and the players set up in their positions? Or
I don't
did one
know.
of the umpires say, "Oh, look, I'm sorry, the other umpire's gone. We're going to have to abandon the game." Like, I'd love to know how that played out. Yeah, I reckon that would be very, very funny. Uh,
Also, at what point can't just, what point can't just average Joe Blow that's watching the game just grab a whistle and
yeah, for the
throw
thirds
the
especially.
throw the ball up and just get the
Yeah,
game going. Like,
yeah,
I reckon if that had been us, it would have just been hell. The players would have just umpired themselves.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, our thirds team have done all manner of things to get games
yeah.
played. They had to move a hot air balloon one day when it crashed onto the ground. So thirds football are used to this or used to crazy things happening. So I'm surprised they actually abandoned the game, but maybe that spoke, Rob, a little bit more to both teams looking at the conditions and thinking, you know what,
Yeah.
an abandonment at quarter time might not be the worst result here.
Hey,
Um,
boys, pup, should we
yeah,
just get a beer?
yeah. It's not often, unlike in cricket where you play the rain card.
Yeah.
You don't often get to play that in football, but I reckon they might have been no umpires. Well, we're
Hmm.
done, boys. But very good. That's an interesting one. Let's see if we hear any more from that one, I
Yeah.
reckon. Um, I've got a pretty quick one here, Rob, for something that caught my eye. It's not anything crazy like that. But all it was just a big upset in the Hampton Football Netball League, and it's Camperdown sitting seventh on the ladder, knocking off Warrnambool, who are currently third on the ladder by 6 points. Now, you did talk about scores indicating the conditions. I think you might get a little bit of an idea of what the conditions were like in windy Warrnambool. It was Camperdown 5-8-38 to Warrnambool 4-8-32. So not super high scoring. Um, However, an interesting little tidbit for the game is Aaron Black for Warrnambool kicking all four of their goals.
Oh,
So he still
wow.
managed to snag four, and they've kicked four for the game. So, if anything, you could probably argue that Aaron probably needed to do a little bit more there to kick six and win them the game. But yeah, certainly a good win there for Camperdown. That Hampton League is another one that we've spoken a bit about, and positions on the ladder just tightening in that league as well.
Mm,
Certainly, getting a bit more competitive there as we get closer to finals. So yeah, that win from Camperdown certainly doesn't put Warrnambool at any risk, but it certainly impacts their chances of trying to finish in that top two.
very good. Yeah, tightening up down there as it is in a lot of leagues around the state, Pete. Now we've been on Ton Watch recently, heading over to the Ellenbank District League repeatedly to check in with what's going on there. Two players heading for the Ton. Mason McGarity now playing for Newham South. He needed 8 to get there on the weekend. He managed 7. So
Weak.
he's now on 99 goals. Disappointing week out for Mason. That's a small bag in the scheme of the bags he's been kicking. No, well done. 99. I presume he'll get there this week. I don't know who they're playing, but it doesn't seem to matter at this point. He's kicking them from everywhere. They could have the buy and he'd probably still get to his 100. Michael Newton, on the other hand, playing for Raruli in the Ovens and King League. That's a league we haven't spoken too much about.
We're too, I can
Rowley.
tell
Thank
you.
you,
There you
Pete.
go.
Thank
Got
you.
you on
Very
that
good.
one.
Um, now, so Mason McGarity heading up towards the ton might have thought he was going to get there next in the state. Well, actually, Michael Newton kicked 12 on the weekend for Rowley to get to 99. So he's closed the gap very quickly.
He has.
So it'd be interesting to see whether it's Mason or Michael who will get to the ton first on the weekend. And they've also got stiff competition from another bloke who kicked 12 on the weekend, and that is Bridgewater's Lockie Sharp. He moved to 98 goals. So some more big bags around local footy in Victoria,
All happening.
and a couple of contenders who bobbed up that
Mm.
maybe didn't think they would be the next to clock the ton in local footy in Victoria. On that note of Lockie Sharp playing for Bridgewater, I did see that they're continuing their epic march. I was going to say up the ladder. They've reached the top. I guess they can't go any higher. But they had a 132-point win over Newbridge on the weekend. They remain a game clear of Morong at the top of the Loddon Valley League ladder. So great stuff there by Bridgewater and especially Lockie Sharp, who got them home with 12 goals.
Yes, and Lockie Sharp, a name familiar to me because he did play a fair bit of football at Strathfield Say Football Club in the
Right.
Bendigo League. Just having a look at his career stats here, 1,239 total goals
Oh,
for Lockie. So kicking a bag is probably just in his DNA. So
yeah.
certainly some interesting ones there. Speaking of players that kick bag of goals at full forward, Rob, we've had an announcement. Bendigo Football Netball League have mentioned that Broadford are coming into the season next year, or coming into the competition next year, sorry. And the interest has all been around who will be coaching in Broadford in season 2026. And the reason why Kicking Bags of Goals aligns really well is that it is an ex AFL full forward in the shape of Nathan Thompson, who will be coaching there in 2026. Now, Tomo, of course, has had a little bit of experience in the past at Kyneton, where he was playing coach there when they were sort of coming back from recess. And so maybe didn't have quite the success he wanted there, but as we have seen, it is always really challenging when you're bringing a club back from the brink. And that's what faces him again this time as they look to bring Broadford back from the brink and try and be competitive in the Bendigo Footy Netball League in season 2026. So big announcement, big coup for them. I suppose if you are going to have a crack at this from a Broadford perspective, you've probably ticked the first item off the bucket list, which is A, get a coach, but B, get a recognizable coach that will potentially assist when it comes to bringing players to the club. So yeah, really interesting announcement there for the Broadford Football Netball Club. The article that had announced that was saying that no such player recruits at this point in time to announce, but I have no doubt that they are working really hard behind the scenes, and that there will, I think if we're talking about, all right, you've done that first item, tick, big coach, recognizable coach. I think the next big thing on the item has got to be who are some of these, two or three marquee players that are really going to drive some confidence in filling out the rest of that list. That's the challenge now ahead of Broadford. Is it's probably trying to recruit 90 to 100 blokes to be player seniors, reserves, under 18. So fair bit of work ahead of them there. I think we've discussed a fair bit of that Bendigo strategy and the perils that they might be coming into. But look, encouraging that Broadford have at least done the first end of their side of the bargain, which is get a big coach. Hopefully, it's going to work, and hopefully, it's Tomo coaching and not having to fill the team out and play it full forward as playing coach.
Yeah, big announcement there, and you'd have to think that his experience in bringing Kyneton out of recess is a really big reason why he has been targeted by Broadford in this scenario. So well done to the powers that be at Broadford. Uh, Look, my view on this is that I don't think it's particularly impressive of the Bendigo League to be targeting Broadford. I don't think it's necessarily the right thing for that league. But having made that decision, I'm all on Broadford's bandwagon here. I really hope that they're going to make the best of this and that they will get a team up and that they will get a really competitive team up. And hopefully, someone with Nathan Thompson's contacts, not just throughout the AFL world, but also crucially throughout that central Victorian region with his Kyneton connections. I hope that that's able to work some magic, not at the expense of teams like Kyneton, hopefully, um, but even though Kyneton have undergone some changes, shifting from the Bendigo League, you'd have to say that what Tomo started there at Kyneton has led, of course, not just down to him, but um, down to the dedication and hard work of everyone at Kyneton, has led to a team that does look sustainable now, albeit in a different league. And you'd have to think that Broadford had that in mind when recruiting Tomo to be their figurehead. Here's somebody with AFL experience and the experience of dragging a team from a similar sized town out of recess in the same league. It ticks all the boxes for me. So yeah, well done, Broadford, and good luck. Good luck, Tomo.
They're
Yeah,
going
I
to need
think
it,
that's big move. Yep.
definitely.
All right, I'm going to jump here, Pete, to a league that we've really not spoken much about, which is actually a little bit of a surprise. We really, really like covering their northern neighbours. We love talking about the Ovens and Murray. We've paid considerably less attention to the Goulburn Valley Football League,
Yeah.
and that's probably to our discredit. It's a very good league. There's a lot of good football there, and there were some interesting results on the weekend, which I'll go through. There were some close results and some not so close results. There were quite a few sides, quite a few bottom sides playing top sides, or bottom sides playing middle teams, but quite a few wins ahead. And
Yep.
those games basically all went as expected with fairly large margins. But there were two games involving teams that were next to each other on the ladder in the GVFL on the weekend, and they absolutely lived up to it. They were both cracking games. The first one, not too far from Broadford, was Seymour, who ended up getting the chocolates over Euroa. 3 goals 8-26 to 3 goals 6-24. Even more rain affected, you might suggest there, than the game down in Warrnambool. So not even 4 goals on the board there for Seymour. Um, Interestingly, Seymour were goalless in the second half, but they still managed to hang on and win the game. They kicked four behinds only to 2 goals, four, I think, in the second half. It was enough to hang on. So,
Yeah.
look, you got to do what you got to do, I guess. And I think that's a classic example of you just take the 4 points and move on.
Yep.
Um,
I'd say so.
Probably not the kind of football that too many spectators were really getting out and about to look at on the weekend. But well done, Seymour. Up the road, another classic, and this one had I've forgotten to write down the exact score here, but it was considerably more than 3 goals each. Mansfield had a draw with Rochester, so the Rochi Tigers got off to a fantastic start with a 5 goal to 1 first quarter, 5 goals straight, in fact, in the first quarter. So if that is wind affected, that's very good kicking by Rochester in the first term. Mansfield slowly pegged them back, so in each of the remaining 3 quarters, Mansfield scored just 1 goal more than Rochi and a handful of behinds. And so over the course of the next 3 quarters, they pegged it back to draw it level, and it was level on the final siren. So a classic there in the GVFL, and a good reminder for us that there's plenty of good games happening there. Since we haven't talked that much about the Goulburn Valley League, I'll just note that Kyabram are the team to beat there,
Hmm.
still on top of the GVFL ladder, undefeated at 15-0. So great work there from Kyabram. Echuca, Rochester, and Mansfield round out the top four, followed by Shep Swans, followed
Yep.
by the rest of the Shepparton teams. Um, so, yep, strong league. Good work there from Kyabram, and well done, Mansfield, who with that draw uh, keep themselves very much in the hunt. A loss there to Rochi would have probably put them behind Shep Swans. So, good work there from Mansfield against the highly fancied Rochester.
Yeah, definitely. 8-10, 58 to 9-4, 58 were the scores there in
Thank
that
you.
game. And Cooper Hamilton, which some people may know was the player for GWS, who was probably a little more famous for being their social media boy and did a lot of their very creative social media videos. He's actually playing for Rochester this season. So I think he's aligned with the Carlton VFL team,
Yeah.
the Northern Blues. But I'm pretty confident that yeah, he's been playing a fair bit of his time there at Rochester when not selected in that team. Certainly a
Would
good.
does that mean we need to check out the Rochester social media? We need to
Potentially, I haven't actually checked out
mm,
their social media to see what they do.
put that on the
But
homework sheet.
we might have to. But certainly, yeah, certainly a good league there, and it'll be interesting to know what they play in terms of finals, because there does seem to be a really strong top six there. If they play a top six, then it looks like finals are pretty much sorted. If they play a top five, there's definitely some interesting results to go to see who's playing in those finals. But um, that's a great one to cover, Rob. I am. It feels like what caught my eye this week is pretty much just going back to the well of things that we've discussed in last week's episode or previous weeks. But um, I'm going back to the West Gippsland Football Netball League, Rob. I mentioned in last week's episode that there was some discussion around the applications from Druin, Pakenham, and Officer to join that league. Druin from the Gippsland Football Netball League, and Pakenham and Officer both from the Outer East Footy League. Well, during the week, decisions have been made, and some interesting decisions have been made. So, on the good news, the West Gippsland Football Netball League have accepted the decision for Druin to move leagues and come play football in that league from season 2026. Now, clearly, that moves off to approval from AFL Victoria, along with approval from the Gippsland Football Netball League as well. So these sagas are still to play out if the league that they are moving from decides no, we're not quite ready to part with you yet. But in an interesting decision, after deciding to accept Druin, the West Gippsland Football Netball League clubs all in terms of not all of the clubs, but they decided to reject both Pakenham and Officers' applications. Now, the indication, and it's back to one of the discussions we've had on a previous episode. No one can give you a distinct percentage towards the 75% because apparently mathematics and is not the strong suit of administration in football world. But
I think their maths is fine. I think it's just the communication.
yeah, well, true. Um, but the indication from the president at Pakenham was that they believe they got around 50% of the vote. So around 25% away from that 75%. They have indicated that they will likely try again next season to join that league, but will reset for another year in the Outer East. So getting themselves ready for that Outer East. Um, the officer response was very much just a holding message saying that they were acknowledging that they had been rejected and that they would be assessing their sort of steps moving forward. No real word on what their longer term strategy is there from officer. So very, very interesting. I know that we spoke in last week's episode that a lot of the clubs and the West Gippsland Football Netball League would love to go to a division structure. They felt that 5 teams were needed to transfer over. So it makes complete logical sense why you'd knock 2 of them back and have to seek 4 applications next year. Um, didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Yeah, I think we may have spoke last week that my feeling was you probably just accept the two clubs, go another year all in, and then hope that you can find two other clubs that you can convince to apply for the following season. Then you've got your division structure that you so desperately want. As it is, I think they put that at risk for another year because I think finding four teams to want to make the move is going to be quite bold. So yeah, interesting decisions there from the West Gippsland Football Netball League. Probably some happy fans there at Druin if they can get through that next phase. And I did visit the Facebook pages of Pakenham and Officer and probably saw some less happy fans, you could probably say.
Mm.
Very disappointed and probably feeling like there's a bit of an insular decision making, which I know that we've certainly seen in some others. As an extra tidbit to that, Rob, I know we've been following a lot of these, and I have another little update around the Maryborough application into the Maryborough Castlemaine District Football League. There was another article written around that decision and where some of that sits and what's next for Maryborough just recently. And there was an interesting little notice in there that tensions are fairly high and that at least one sponsor that sponsors a number of the clubs in that league, along with the Maryborough Football Club itself, are threatening to pull their dollars away from any club they discover voted against the move. So there might be some clubs out there that have that sponsor that are somewhat trying to reduce. You're talking about they may have a communication issue. I think it'll be a no communication. It will be the ideal situation there for a few clubs that are probably not wanting to lose their sponsorship dollars from an unnamed sponsor that clearly would love to see the Maryborough Football Club back in football, and one that yeah, obviously may have a bit of pulling power if they're threatening to remove their dollars from other clubs. So yeah, just a little interesting watch this space as we continue through this whole saga that is clubs looking to move leagues, Rob.
Well, that's better than an aside, a little tidbit. That's juicy gossip. That's that's get your popcorn out stuff. Um, Following the release of that article, there are going to be plenty of people just doing a little bit of digging onto uh, anybody that is the sponsor of multiple teams, including the Maryborough Magpies. Um, I don't think it will take very long in a small town to work out who that sponsor is. Um, I don't know. I haven't done any digging myself, but
Neither have I.
I'd be very surprised if that information is secret for too long. Um, to be honest, good on them. Uh, put your money where your mouth is. If you believe really firmly in the value of continuing to keep the tradition alive in these clubs that mean so much to people. Uh, this is going very much into the realm of my personal opinion rather than a case study that I've conducted with all the pros and cons and the finances and the business. I just think it's insane that the Magpies have not been allowed into that league and that they've just been left to rot on the vine. I think it's outrageous, and I'm happy to hear that there's people in the community standing up and fighting for them. So yeah, maybe there are financial or other reasons why some clubs feel like it's in their best interest not to have to compete against a club with 140 years of history.
Mm.
But I think it's a real shame that, and I think it's short-sighted. So yeah, good on them. Um, Interesting to hear about Druin being accepted to move into the West Gippsland League. I know from reporting that we did on this earlier in the year that they were pretty desperate to leave the Gippsland League, mostly because of travel times. I don't think there was other underlying tension there. It's more just that they're a club that's quite a bit closer to Melbourne and saw their recruiting power being much stronger
Mm.
with travel times that weren't including having to travel all the way to Bairnsdale and Sale. much happier
Yeah.
travelling into the local West Gippsland area and even into the outer eastern metropolitan area. So good
Yeah.
result for them. Hopefully they will get that across the line in the Gippsland League. I know Gippsland will be probably disappointed to lose them though, as one of their connection clubs closer to Melbourne. So that'll be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
And Pakenham and Officer, I don't know too much about the clubs, so it's good to hear that Pakenham will go again.
Mm,
And we'll wait and see for Officer.
definitely.
Good work there, Pete. Good coverage on that. Um, all right, I might give you two final ones here for kind of round the grounds. I did note in the Gippsland League, speaking of, that there was a real ding-dong battle there for the hot finals contenders, Warragul and Traralgon. The Warragul Gulls, which is one of the great names. If your team's called Warragul, calling your team the Gulls is great. I think that's awesome. Um, they sit fourth on 9 wins. They've now drawn level on 9 wins with third place Traralgon after an epic 1 point win at home. Traralgon pegged back a 4 goal quarter time deficit to be in front by a goal at the final change. So very strong turnaround there from Traralgon, but a 4 goal to 3 final quarter by the Gulls got them home. So well done there to Warrigal. Um, they seem to be cementing themselves into a finals position. One side that is not cementing themselves into a finals position but came home with a really fantastic upset win against the odds was Warborough, taking you down now to the Central Highlands Footy League. Uh, Warborough, the Kangaroos, got up over Daylesford. 19 points the margin was there. Very impressive win by Warborough. Only their second win for the year, and they've knocked off the reigning premiers, who are sitting in third, I think. Um, or might be no, fifth place. They are. Daylesford are sitting in fifth place at the moment. Um, yeah, very impressive by Warborough. They led all day. They held on to win fairly comfortably, even despite being held goalless in the final quarter. So well done to Warborough. That's definitely would have been a rocky night in the pub there in Warborough after beating the big town in the area. And we haven't checked in with the Central Highlands League for a little while. I can report there that Dunstown are still the team to beat, sitting 3 games clear on top of the ladder at 13 and 1. So they're looking very strong and pretty even competition across the other finals contenders there in the Central Highland League. So that's a bit of a roundup of what caught our eye. Uh,
I do just have one extra
yeah, go for it.
that I actually reckon we should cover this in another episode, but I'm just going to mention it now because I did catch my eye when I was looking at that Maryborough situation. I wanted to, so the Maryborough Junior Football Club is still playing, which we've discussed and
Yeah,
mentioned before.
yeah.
I was having a look at the Bendigo Junior Footy League just to see where Maryborough were at in some of those. And I just saw something, I just saw some real weird things, and I haven't looked at it extensively, which is why I think we need to take a little bit of time and have a look into it and maybe discuss it at another episode. Maybe it's our next footy fire starters. But
Mm-hmm.
there's three divisions of under 16s football in the Bendigo Junior Footy Leagues. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
that didn't raise any eyebrows to me. The bottom division has 11 teams in it. Yep, that's fine. That's a Then weirdly, the second division and the top division have 5 teams each. So 5 teams in the top division, 5 teams in the second division, and then 11 teams in the bottom division. Confused, weird. I'm not sure what the go is there. I want to do a little bit more work into that, Rob, but that's one I reckon we might be able to pick up next week and have a look at deeper from a footy fire starters perspective, because just feels like we're robbing people the opportunity of playing football by having a division of 5 instead of having a division, or 2 divisions of 5 instead of having, dare I say it, controversially, one division of 10. So anyway, Rob, that's just an interesting one there that I reckon we can pick up maybe next week. But there's some plenty good stuff there that we've managed to pick up in what caught our eye this week, and I'm sure we've missed a lot as well. But We always encourage people to send in anything they might like us to cover. But I think it's probably a perfect time now, Rob, to go to our Paddock to Premiership and check out some of the results that the teams we've been following just a little more closely have had on the weekend. Would you like to kick us off?
I can kick us off. It's not been a good week for me, unfortunately. Karingal came back to earth with a pretty big thud on the weekend, unfortunately, after their drought-breaking win last week. It is quite possible that the hangover was still in effect.
Oh, I was about to say they're still
And
hungover.
I don't know what it was. They played Seaford, who are mid-table, 104-point loss. It probably doesn't bode super well because they've got third place Chelsea this week. So it's pretty big disparity between the top and the bottom in that league. So might be a little bit tough for the Bulls.
Yes, well, it doesn't get any better on my end to start with. Castlemaine losing by 32 points to Eagle Hawk in what was again another low scoring encounter. Um, Mathematically, this isn't the case, but finals, I think, are probably out of the equation now. They're two games out of the top five with three games left, but also a decent percentage away as well. So I think that's probably the season done for Castlemaine from making the top five. Still think it's absolutely disgusting that a team that's sitting 5 and 8 is going to be making finals. I tried to find some other leagues with 8 teams, but could not find one that had a team in finals with a losing record. I also then looked back at the 2024, 2023, and 2022 seasons in the Bendigo Football League. Of course, there were more teams, but there might be something in
Mm,
that. None of those had a finals team with a losing record. In fact, some of those seasons had teams missing out on finals that had winning records.
right.
Yeah, we don't need to keep harping on it maybe every week, but I will because I think the state of the Bendigo Football League is in some dire need of some help. But Strathfield say at Camp Reserve next for Castlemaine in a game that, yeah, if they don't win that, then finals will definitely be mathematically unachievable. With Strathfield say sitting as that 5 and 8 team in fifth spot, 2 games ahead of Castlemaine. So make or break.
Yeah, having said that, Castlemaine played reasonably well against Strath last time, so
True.
the margin wasn't that big. So you'd have to think Castlemaine are targeting that one as one of their more winnable games
You would hope
coming
so.
up. Um, so okay, back to me. Pyramid Hill had the bye, so I did mention Bridgewater kept marching on there in the Loddon Valley League. Pyramid Hill had the bye, and as you don't get points for the bye in that league, they are slipping further behind. Um, but I will take you to Prem B briefly, and I mean briefly because talking about Fitzroy these days is never fun. Anybody who's stuck with this podcast for the year will be absolutely jack of me talking about Fitzroy's season being over. This is the last time I'm going to say it. It really is over now. They will be relegated. I know I've said that before, but that was kind of just a, I think it's probably done. There is no mathematical route back for them now.
They're done.
We're not even talking mathematical possibilities. I'm pretty sure they lost to Campwell by 16 points. So season done. See you in Prem C.
That's going to be a case that I think there'll be a lot of investigation internally at the club as to what's gone wrong. From
Yep.
winning from well, not winning, sorry, but from being promoted in Prem B to Prem A for the first time ever, having a fairly competitive season in Prem A, to now down to Prem C, following a nightmare season. Anyway, I can give slightly better news that the North Albury Hoppers have had a much needed 109-point win against bottom of the ladder Wodonga Raiders. Even better news, I can report the Joshua twins are back. Murphy kicked 7 goals, Minogue
Oh,
kicked four.
oh,
It
oh, here we go.
moves them back up to fourth. Same amount of points as third and fifth, so still very tight on that ladder. and a huge game playing against the Wang Magpies, who are that team on fifth in the ladder. So big game. But if the Joshua twins are there as the two big forward pillars, I reckon they can get the job done.
Great to hear the Joshua trees are back. Um, very happy about that. Happy about that for you. Um, and happy to hear the Hoppers back on the board. I did actually watch a little bit of the live stream. From my time of watching it, it was a replay, but it was the archived live stream of Yarrawonga against Wodonga Bulldogs,
Yep,
and that was impressive. Good
good,
stream, good coverage. We've said it many times before. Good
very
standard
good,
of
mate.
footy. I
Good
enjoyed
lad,
that. Yeah, it
good
was
lad.
good. All right, my last one. I picked Old Trinity as my next Paddock to Premiership team,
The curse.
much to Pete's disgust, and it has come back to bite me this week. In a sense, I mean, it was a loss for the OTs against Old Kerry, but it really just serves to emphasise the Lions' Den that is Premier B, apart from any game involving Fitzroy or Hampton. 8 of the 10 teams in that division are so evenly locked that any game can be won or lost, really. So very impressive by Old Carey, who moved, I believe, from 8th to 7th with that win. Um, and they sit in 7th now. Old Trinity sit in 2nd. And just to remind people about the closeness of that league, there is now one game separating 3rd and 7th. And there's only one more game to Old Melburnians who are in 8th on 6 wins. So
Yeah,
still, and gee, the percentages are
yeah,
all over the place there. So Old Melburnians are in 8th place with 6 wins, but 122%, whereas Caulfield are in 4th with 8 wins and only 103, 104%. Look, it's
yeah.
all over the place. I'm actually going to, if I find some time this week, do a bit of a ladder predictor and see if I can work out some permutations because there's a lot
Yeah,
going on.
it's a great idea. I suppose just to give a overview of that role, I've got the ladder here in front of me. I won't mention the teams aside them, but the points going down the ladder are 44, 40, 32, 32, 28, 28, 28, 24 for that sort of top eight, because we know that Fitzroy and Hampton are gone. Um, that's and so yeah, Old Melburnians sit eighth. A win and other teams having the right losses could put them fifth
Yeah,
in one game. So
yeah,
lots of permutations there. Think we probably do need to have a look at the remaining fixtures
yeah,
and see who plays who, because I think that might go a long way as to who ends up in the finals. And I think it's one of those leagues that you're going to have a top four where you go into the first week of finals with anyone being a potential possibility of winning the
yeah,
game.
yeah.
So
But even if we try and do a ladder predictor, I mean, we probably would have picked Trinity to beat Carey on the weekend, so
we
it
would
might
have.
actually be pointless. It
It could
might be
actually
a
be.
fruitless exercise.
Let's
But
do it
anyway, it would be
anyway and
fun.
see how we go. Um, maybe we just need to roll dice, and whoever gets the highest roll, that's who wins the game on our ladder predictor, and we go from there. Rob, we're going to head up to Tulibuck Manangatang, who beat Lake Boga by 17 points. There were three players that each kicked 4 goals there for Tulibuck. So well done to Ethan Johnston, Josh Costa, and Connor Nutting. They are 2 games out of finals with 4 games left. They play eighth place Kerrang. Um, they're still up against it though, based off who fourth and fifth play in the remaining fixtures. So fourth and fifth on the ladder there, probably play some fixtures that are more expected to win. Now that's not a given in football, but certainly Buck might find the going difficult in making that final spot. And to finish off our Paddock to Premiership for another week, The extra team I added, the Monash Blues. As I've said the whole time, this is not one to win the Premiership. This is one to stay away from relegation and a triple drop. I said last week that the goal was keep it close against top of the ladder and undefeated Ormond. Geez, they were doing it at quarter time. They were only 4 points down, 20 to 16. It looked like they were going to do the job on maybe a wet track and just keep it low scoring. Was not to be. Ormond kicked away 80 points in the end. Um, Now, the great thing is the teams below them were equally pumped. So if you're going to have an 80-point loss, it's great that teams below you equally have an 80 to 100-point loss. So no real harm done at this stage. A very winnable game against Brunswick coming up, I reckon, this week. Brunswick mid-table. I think that is one that Monash Blues will be close to throwing the kitchen sink at because it feels like they are just one win away from putting any talk of relegation to bed. So let's see what they do.
Away game for Monash though. It's a fair trip over to Brunswick
It
from
is.
Clayton. So
Yeah.
let's see how they go. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, yeah, for Monash Blues. Great work. Good summaries. You're smashing me in the Paddock Premiership again, even despite my additional team. I might have, no, I won't add a fifth.
Oh, that would be outrageous. You'd really put me on the spot. I wouldn't know who to add as my fifth.
I think I would provide a commentator's curse at this point. I'm just going to leave it. Um, all
You'd
right,
have
that's
to
all we've got
you'd
time
have to
for.
lock yourself into like a Parkdale or an Ormond or a Powerhouse or someone that's someone
Yeah, maybe
a
maybe Kai Abram.
Kangutner. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, there we
If
go.
if and then we can really test the theory as to whether you're the curse. Because if you turn that team south, then boy oh boy, that would be alarming.
I think I'm just going to leave well enough alone. Thanks for joining us for another week of Got the 4 Points. It's as we said, it's cold, it's wet, it's wintry. We hope that you're home by the fire and keeping warm and cozy. And when you get out on the weekend, we hope your team gets the 4 points. Hopefully, all the umpires can keep it together this week uh, with regards to their own personal interactions. Hopefully, whoever's on the scoreboard will be keeping a close eye out and get the right scores up there on the board. And we'll all make sure that at the end of the day, the right team gets the 4 points. Have a great week, and we will see you next time.